Welcome to grit.org. So today I'm super excited. We have Garrett Scantling here with us in the studio, and we're talking about Grit Camp, talking about sports camp, talking about kids having the opportunity to learn and grow through sports. So Garrett, thanks for coming today.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm super excited to be on here again.
Yeah, for sure. So really just want to talk to you about just sports as a kid. So anything that you can share, getting into sports, any sports camps that you remember?
Yeah, so just as a young age, I think that my dad instilled sports into me and my brother from the beginning. I think that was just how we got our discipline, how we found camaraderie in our friendships, how we just started to grow as kids and as people. I think that as every American young athlete, you want to play football when you're growing up. But just the fact that my dad implemented a fact of he wants me to do baseball and basketball and football and even wants me to try track. Just doing those multi-sports was super important for my development, not only physically but mentally, I think is the most important part for sure.
Yeah, and so do you remember your first summer sports camp as a kid?
Pine Forest.
Okay.
Pine Forest, it's over here on the south side. I used to go there all through elementary school, and it was everything from, I remember learning ballet. I remember learning how to cook. They had cooking classes. They did every sport out there. It was the first time I had ever tried something like hockey or even lacrosse. So even just having that sense of community in the summer. Summer especially is a really tricky time because you can be sitting at home and not be doing anything constructive and think that it's my off time. I'm not in school. I need to be relaxing. But at the same time, I think that it's so important for one's growth and development to be a part of communities such as the Grit Camp, and where they have all people of the same age doing the same thing and creating these friendships and lasting friendships that can last forever at least. So, I am a big believer in sports camps over the summer and doing things constructive with your time that help you in the future. So,
and growing up, did you go pretty much every week of the summer to a sports camp, or?
I would say it kind of depended. So, growing up in elementary school into middle school, I would say yes. We always had a certain camp that we would go to, whether it would be a month long or a month and a half. But then once we got into high school and I knew exactly what I wanted to do with my life, whether it would be football or track, I knew what I needed to do in the summer. I needed to grind, I needed to work. And so I did track-specific camps. I did football-specific camps. So when you're at a young age, I would say try as much as you can, because you never know what is going to click. You never know how your body is going to develop. And so when you're in 10th or 11th grade, once you know kind of what your life can look like and what your passions are, that's when you kind of want to get specific with it and start grinding that way. So I would say high school was a little bit more, let's go out and let's work out, let's sport-specific workouts and stuff. But in middle school and elementary school, it was all about having fun and being around my friends and getting that in. So,
and I'm curious too, your thoughts on this, because the trend is definitely starting kids specializing a lot earlier on. Mm-hmm. Give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, coming from me, I'm a decathlete. So I'm all about multi-sports. I'm all about doing multifaceted things. So I think the more that you can throw at a young mind, a young kid, or the more athletic intangibles that he has to use, the more it's going to prepare him for life, him or her. Like I say, when I train people, I like to almost confuse their body. And so if you're going to these camps and you don't know just physical movements, simple movements that are athletic movements, but you can base yourself off of your friends that are also there and learn those movements and learn how to be a better athlete, I think it's super important, just because you're ahead of the game. You're ahead of these other kids that might not know body control, might not know how to be athletic, but you kind of have that head start. So I think it's super important to be multifaceted.
Yeah. And, I think there is something too with a developing body and overusing one particular muscle group is that, you tend to have more injuries that are harder to recover but then also other parts of your body aren't further developing and getting as strong as they could be.
Exactly.
Do you find that to be true as well?
And that's a tricky subject, because with me growing up in the 2010s and on, it was like, if you're young, you don't want to get in the weight room. You don't want to do these specific drills that are going to stunt your growth or hurt your growth plates and stuff like that. But the more experience I got in sports, the more I realized that at a young age, as long as you aren't putting 100 pounds on their back and telling them to squat, doing sport-specific mobility movements and making sure that their limbs can move in certain ways that they're supposed to, like I said, it gives them a head start, and it makes them that much more prepared for the future and that much more prepared for what's to come. So yeah.
And I know you're a strength and conditioning coach and weightlifting. Do you typically recommend like that high school, 9th grade is when they really start adding on weights?
I would say yes. I recommend 9th grade, 8th and 9th grade, I think, are super important introductory years, just because the mind is developing. They're comfortable, whether they've been, and especially at Episcopal, if they've been there for a year or 2 years, they're comfortable in their situation. Now they understand that they need to start working at something that they can be better at. And so, I really think that it is important just on the development side of things. So, yeah.
One of the things that I find interesting about, and that I love about a multi-sport camp, is the fact that it gives kids a chance to try new sports they haven't done before. You have all the tools and resources, because, as a parent, if they're like, hey, I want to try something out, you were like, well, I got to go buy all the supplies. Where do I get them? And then the kids, you don't really know what you're doing, so you can't teach them. Whereas you go there and kids have a chance to fail a ton.
Right.
And there's no pressure. It's not like PE where you're going to get made fun of or pick last. It's not like you're doing it for the first time in 9th grade where if you don't perform, you're going to get cut. When you're performing under pressure and you're trying to learn the sport. Whereas a sports camp, there's no pressure. You go out there, you have fun. Other people are learning.
Yep.
And I find that to be a really great way for kids to find things that they enjoy that they maybe wouldn't have found otherwise.
Right, yeah. And I think the one word that I hear you say is pressure. I think that is the most influential part of kids not getting what they need to get, is they put too much pressure on themselves. Or just the outside pressures are too much. And so when they can go and not have anything to worry about but just having fun and enjoy that sport, whether it be soccer, basketball, dodgeball, whatever it may be, I think that just opens their mind a little bit more to the aspect of, maybe I can do this a little bit more seriously. And I'll always say that, especially when you get into 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, and you see these kids trying to figure out their way of where they're going to go to school, and they're always influenced by other decisions and other people or other factors. Always play an influence in it, and it's almost unfortunate to see, because you don't want to see pressure put on the kid to make them decide. You want them to enjoy it. You want them to understand that this is the path they want to take for the reason into making their life better. And so I think just from a young age and having that blueprint there, when they get into high school, it'll just make it that much more easier for them to make a decision about what they want to do with their life. So
yeah, and I think it's so fun to watch kids see, because I think so much of it is finding the intersection of what you're good at, but also what you enjoy.
Right.
And when those two align, that's where the magic happens, because you're going to have fun, you're going to put in the work because you enjoy it. But you tend to have a skill set related to that, whether it's a body type or, endurance or whatever it may be.
Right. And you saying I like to say that's your calling, right?
Yeah.
And I think I'm going through that right now, is figuring out what I enjoy and what I'm good at, and finding that intersection. And what helps it is trial and error. You never know what can happen. So going out here and trying different things and figuring out what you're good at is ultimately how you understand what you need to be in your place in this world. So I think that having that at a grit camp at such a young age is super important. So,
and curious too, do you remember, was there kind of that moment for you where it was like, okay, I'm pretty fast? Was there, or not just maybe an outside? I
wouldn't say it was the speed. I would say it was the adaptability to certain events. So like pole vault and high jump. They're two of the most technically sound events that you can do. Everything is technical in that event. You have to be able to know how to do everything to make it work. And so just the fact that I was able to comfortably do something like that and pick it up and not feel so much pressure on myself, but almost feel like it's fun, I think that's when I realized that track was something that was something I could take further, at least. And it's definitely, everyone has that moment. I would definitely say that it wasn't until I got to college when I figured that I could take it super seriously and maybe turn it into a job kind of thing. But in terms of knowing that this was my calling and knowing that I'd be good at it, I would say that it was definitely high school and just understanding that I'm good at picking up random stuff, I guess you would say, and being really good at it. So yeah, it's like I said, trial and error, and finding different sports, trying different things, and then finding your niche. So,
and I think what I love so much about sports is that you take, and kind of this piggyback to what you're saying is like your confidence from figuring something else out gives you the confidence to figure that next thing out.
Right.
That gives you the confidence to figure out the next thing. So it starts this snowball where you start to see success, and then it becomes a healthy confidence where you believe in yourself, and it's not the pressure, it's more belief that you have in your own ability to figure it out.
And I say this all the time that being a student athlete in college has given me so much confidence going forward. Just in the fact of even being up here in this podcast talking to you. In high school, I couldn't have done it. But once I got to college and once I understood who I was as a person in my sport and what I could offer this world, that's when I started to get more confident in myself, my ability to speak, my ability to do things. Do I still get nervous? Do I still get uncomfortable? Yes. But I know that I can handle it because of my time as an athlete, my time with sports, all the pressures I had to deal with. And even though you had to deal with those pressures, I still came out on top. So that means, yeah, you have to deal with it, but in a certain way, as long as you get past it and you do what you're supposed to do, things will work out. So sports has taught me more than anything in my life.
Yeah, I love it. Well, so I want to ask you and get your opinion and feedback. I mean, you've seen, you know kind of about Grit Camp, what we do, what we stand for. So I'm curious, what's kind of your take? What are some things that you find to be selling points for Grit Camp?
I would say the two most important things that I've noticed is exposure. So you have these student athletes who are in college and they are your counselors, and they've been in that position. They are there. They understand what it takes to get to the next level. They understand, all the work that goes into it, the mental side, the physical side, the emotional side. And they're all great people. And that's the most important part too, because you could have, I know plenty of student athletes in college who just they couldn't convey their message to the younger generation in the correct way. And, you always see that, and it's disheartening and it's sad to see because people have so much to offer, but there's also a sense of knowing how to relay that to other people. And so when I watch this camp go and see what happens, behind closed doors, you actually see the students and the student athletes that care, and they understand that they're there for a purpose and they're there to grow these younger generation of athletes. And so I think that's an important part.
And, one of the fun parts too about, last year we had 6 counselors that were college athletes, and it was, we have high school athletes that want to be at that level, and then, early high school athletes that want to play at the elite high school level. But it's not just about being an elite athlete, because it's helpful to have good instruction that's giving you good technique. But when we're scrimmaging, it's like these elite athletes are playing with the kids, and like, we know you're a 5-star athlete, but you don't need to prove it against this group of 4-year-olds, fourth graders, right? Yeah. You have to learn to tail it back. So it also teaches them a level of maturity of like, look, it's not about me.
Right.
It's about helping this other person get better. And I think what's fun to see happen is this 5-star athlete now gets actually more satisfaction and more reward out of helping this young person than they do actually from performing well themselves. And so for them to get a taste of that and see that, wow, this skill that I have is something that is going to be much greater than however far I get in it. And And that's a really neat part for them to see of like developing that next generation. And the counselors really just were equalizers, right? We, our favorite thing at camp is for a game to end in a tie, right? Where it comes down to that last minute shot,
right,
and you make it or you don't, but at the end of it, hey, everybody's high-fiving and you move on. And but learning to deal with adversity and doing it in a controlled environment that's healthy and safe, and kids are breaking a sweat. And I think, one of the things too, especially with this generation, what I'm so convicted because, was it 3 months before we had decided to kick off Grit Camp and the pandemic hit. So we had 2 signups for camp 2 weeks before camp was supposed to start. But we ended up having 206 kids come through that summer. And I think it was kind of serendipitous how what I feel like this camp does is kind of a perfect fit for what the kids in this generation need. I mean, this is a group of kids that, were under mask and mandates for a couple years. A lot of them did online school, social distancing. They're more comfortable with a phone than a face, right? So getting kids outside, breaking a sweat, interacting with other kids, I think is really something that, schools can't really, it doesn't take the place of what schools do, but I think it goes right along with it in terms of the additional development that kids need.
Exactly. And they might not be kids that they all go to school with. You see kids go to the same school camps that they go to every year. They're around the same kids. And so maybe diversifying yourself, going to a different camp that isn't necessarily at your school to see different kids and understand how to socially integrate yourself with that. It's super important. Like you said, after a pandemic where all their classes were online, maybe their social battery wasn't operating where it should be. Well, now that they have people of their same age, they're all operating, they're playing the same sports, it's exactly where you need to be. And going back on what you said about your counselors, they have a different perspective now about their sport. They've always been competitive, go do this the best that you can. Well, now you stand back and you're teaching a younger person how to do it, which gives you a different appreciation for your sport. And I'm saying this from deep within right now because I'm at a point where I am now coaching and not doing my sport, and now I appreciate the sport so much more just because of that. So having those counselors there for those kids and understanding that those counselors are learning just as much as the kids are, I think that's why it makes the camp work so well. So yeah, I think that this is exactly the type of camp that kids need to be introduced to at a young age. Something that is diversified, something that offers so many different arenas of sports, arenas of emotional support, physical support, mental support, whatever it is. That is exactly what they need, and once again, being socially integrated with their friends it makes it that much better. So
yeah, and you're so right in terms of, I've always said the secret sauce of our camp is really the counselors, and I've got a 9th grade son, and I've told him over and over again, I think the best skill set you can develop as a young person to prepare you for business entrepreneurship, which is what he wants to do, and sales and everything else, is start coaching.
Right.
And because you learn to lead from the front, you learn to lead through positive motivation, you learn to, develop that respect from that younger generation. And so I think to be able to also give these counselors a great teaching tool, that whatever they say is going to be a lot more effective than coming from somebody that's a lot older, their parents' age. And so, but yeah, no, I love that. So, but yeah, that's a wrap for today.
You hear these names, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Simone Biles. What do you guys think they have in common? Go ahead. Talent, but talent isn't the only thing, right? What else do you have to have even though you have talent? What's up, Pete?
A good work ethic.
Good work ethic, right? That's it. I'm going to tell you right now, me in college, so when I was at the University of Georgia, right, I had all the talent in the world. Okay, I was awesome, talented. I could do any event that I wanted to. But I had a problem with my work ethic. I was one of those kids that wanted to hang out with his friends a bunch, go out, have fun in Athens, actually enjoy your college life. That's what people say. But at the same time, that was detrimental to me as an athlete, right? It took me graduating from college, going through to the Atlanta Falcons, understanding that like I said before, if you don't show up to work, someone else is going to show up and they're going to take your spot, right? So when I realized that what I was doing wasn't working, I had to get addicted to the hard work. Okay, I had to actually put in work, I had to put in the grit, I had to put in the hours to understand that, sorry, but the most boring part is practice, right? No one really likes practice, but if you approach practice the way that you approach your meets, what's going to happen? You know exactly what to expect, right? You're going to go out there, you're going to ball out, you're going to have a good time. But if you show up to practice, you're lackadaisical, you are, just going through the motions, not doing exactly what you're supposed to do, that's exactly what's going to happen come game time. Well, it might not happen, you might get lucky, you might have the talent to overcome it, but at the same time, you didn't set yourself up to actually be successful in that situation. So, the biggest thing for me, when you're talking about grit, it is exactly that. It is focusing in on the hard work. It's understanding you have to, my coach used to tell me, embrace the suck, right? Because once again, practice is not fun. But nothing in life that you can get to that is what everyone else strives to be, it's not going to be easy, right? It's going to be difficult. It's going to take hard work. So the one thing I want to leave with you guys is just understanding that for me, in my personal journey, I was not an Olympian. So 2016 was my last year in college. I still had that kind of work ethic. I came in 4th place in Olympic trials. I was not ready for it, right? I showed up, I was out of shape. I thought that my talent could get me to the Olympics. I thought, I told everybody this story, I went through all this stuff. I'm going to make the Olympics in 2016. It's going to happen, right? But that's not how life works. It really isn't. And so when I figured that I feel like I needed to miss that Olympics that one time so that when I came around the next time, I knew that wasn't going to happen again. Why? Because I was working at it. I did everything in my power to make sure that when I showed up the day of, I was ready in every single event, right? You have to do that with everything in your life. You have to understand that whether it's school, whether it's even this speech, whether it's coming up and going to practice or play with your friends, you always have to prepare, right? The better that you prepare, the better you're going to be in the situation. And that's the biggest lesson I can leave for you. It's something that I wish that I would have listened to when my coaches were trying to drill it in my head in Pop Warner, middle school, high school. If you'd have seen me at Episcopal in high school, you would have wondered how I made it to where I made it to. I mean, I see people at school now, actually, here's one right there, sitting right here in front of my face. She understands how to work hard. She comes in, she works. If I had that work ethic in high school, who knows what I would have been in college and beyond, right? I wanted to play football. But because I didn't work as hard as I should have at football, I didn't have the offers that I did in track. And so that's why I went in that arena, right? So a bunch of different things could have changed for me. So I'm trying to tell you right now, if there's one thing that is drilling your head for me, just work. I know it sucks. But work, and it will pay off for you. I promise. Okay?